All right, everybody, welcome. This is Career Lab Wednesday. I am your host, George Miller, and I am going to be sharing more about developing in your careers. Usually, I'll go from thank you, Jane, come from a place of social and emotional intelligence, which is my expertise. But that being said, all questions are welcome. No question too small, no question too big. I don't, of course, have the answer to everything, but oftentimes some engaging will help you think through the thing that you're working on. And sometimes we have people in here that have responses, have good insights into how to address things like keywording in your resumes and things that you're doing through LinkedIn and online. So, you can participate in a couple ways. One that I love is when you jump in directly here online. I That way I get to talk with you directly. And if that is not okay, totally understand. This is being live streamed. It's being live streamed to YouTube and to LinkedIn Live. And so if you have a question and you want to remain anonymous, please type your question into the comment section or into the chat here online. And let me know. Let me know. Usually I'll just say somebody's first name, but I don't even need to do that. I can just read the question. So if you have questions, again, any question career related is on the table. I will tend to take your questions and tie it back to whatever topic I've chosen for the week. You don't need to worry about that. Your job is to have on your heart what it is that you're wanting in your career. The approach that I use with people is to have your career be something that is helping you develop your potential. You've been given gifts to use in this world, in this lifetime. And what are the challenges that are in front of you, and how can those challenges help you become who you yearn to be, help you become the person that you want. And that is a lifelong journey. And so with that as the vision of what you're doing with, where you spend most of your time, most of us as Americans anyway, spend a lot of time working. And so how satisfying is that? How satisfied are you with your relationship in work? And that is a key thing that we want to look at. But again, you can have any question. It doesn't have to be something that seems like it has to do with the topic. Anything that's on your heart, that's your job. As people share, and you are also listening to what they're saying and applying it to yourself. I highly recommend that instead of trying to solve other people's problems and things, that you listen and you see how you relate to what they're working on. You will get more benefit for yourself that way. So I will share again in a few minutes about how you can jump in and work with me. Again, you can do that by coming into the Zoom meeting, or you can do that on the chat. But as people are still joining in, I'm going to talk a little bit about this topic of your job being to take many little meaningful risks. So why do I say that? So in our work, we have we're always wanting to learn and grow. We're always wanting to develop ourselves. The research shows that that's what actually makes us happy, is learning and growing. So there's no such thing as the job that's going to solve all your problems, the relationship that's going to solve all your problems and make you happy. There's no happily ever after. When we are alive on this planet, if we're not learning and growing, we tend to be unsatisfied. So with that context, when you're looking at the challenges that you're facing at work, instead of thinking, oh, maybe I need to go somewhere else to get away from an issue right where I'm at, what I encourage people to do is to take meaningful risks right where they're at. And if the job that you're in really isn't the best fit, as you take those meaningful risks, that's going to become clearer. But you're also going to be developing your sense of self and your confidence. And taking meaningful risks is if I'm at a certain level and I want to go beyond where I'm at, I'm going to have to learn new skills. That's going to mean that I'm going to do things that I don't actually know how to do yet. I'm going to say things, I'm going to have conversations perhaps that are outside of my comfort zone. And we tend to, as humans, try to make big leaps. We'll think of something, a very big risk we could take, like a job pivot, like saying, you know what, I've been working in this industry for this amount of time. I'm unhappy with it, all these things, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know what, I am going to put a lot of time and energy and I'm going to go over to this other thing. And I think that that's more in line with my personality, blah, blah, blah. And I think I'm going to be happier there. Well, sometimes that's true. But in working with people in their careers for the past 10 years, that often does not really address the deeper issue. And after about the first 6 months to a year of a new position, and sure enough, you know, everything that people were hoping to get away from tends to show up there. And so we want to look at, instead of taking these big risks, nothing wrong with taking a big risk, but the game and how you'll end up going further in your career is to take many little meaningful risks, identifying what's right outside of your comfort zone, what's just a little bit uncomfortable for you, and taking a step into that zone. And from that space, establishing that as your new territory or your new sense of self and solidifying that and enjoying that new space and say, oh, you know what? I took those risks. I'm now in this new place. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to take some more little meaningful risks. And that approach to developing in your career is something that will end up taking you a lot further, having you develop a lot more than trying to stake it all on one big risk. Not saying that you shouldn't, but incorporating the strategy of many little meaningful risks. What's something different that I can do each day? What's something a little outside of my comfort zone that I'm going to do that's going to help me become who I want to become? So that's my rant for the day. I'd love to hear from anybody who's joining in. Terry, I saw you earlier, and Eric, good to have you back on. And any updates that anybody has or anything that you're wanting support with specifically, let me know. You're welcome to come off mute, or you can type your questions into the comment section. And for those of you who may be just joining in, you're welcome to type any career-related questions into the comment section, and I'll do my best to get to those. And if that doesn't work, if you want to come into the meeting directly, let us know and we'll provide the Zoom link. So again, this is being streamed live on YouTube and on LinkedIn Live. And if you have any career-related questions, go ahead and type them into the comment section. And as I'm waiting, I'll share more about the importance of taking small risks. Because if you want to cultivate that in your, let's say that you're a business owner or a manager, you know, the best thing to do is to do it yourself. You know, walk the talk. That will encourage other people. They'll see you taking risks And when making some mistakes, celebrating your mistakes, saying, "Oops, I took a risk that didn't work. Here's what I learned about it." And sharing that way is inspiring to people. It helps people know that it's okay if they make a mistake. Now, of course, there's some mistakes that you don't want to make it work. But in terms of developing, if there's issues going on, if there's things that aren't working as well, taking meaningful risks to try new things is 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 what's needed. Um, we live in a changing world. We have new technologies consistently being introduced, and so things will change. Marketplaces change, our environment is changing, and so as humans, that's one thing that we are incredibly good at. We are incredibly good at working together and adapting. That is what I forget the author's name, the person who wrote Sapien. That was one of the things he talks about is that as much as we think we suck at collaborating, and as much as it looks like we're terrible at partnering and being creative together, we're actually very good at it. And part of the reason why we can see so many things wrong with how we partner and connect is because we're scanning for it, is because we're aware of it in ways that, other animals and things just haven't been. So we're actually very good at partnering and facing challenges and coming up with creative solutions. Oh, okay. So good question here. Things to do as an individual contributor to demonstrate readiness for jump to manager. Okay. So you're wanting to, what can you be doing that shows that you would be good at managing? So managing, in my opinion, managing is an underpaid and very challenging job. I hope that managers in the near future will be making more money. But it's a very important step, and a lot of people get a lot of value out of being a manager. And I think that the jump, the learning curve for being a good manager is an intense learning curve. So this is a fantastic question. So what do you do to show readiness to jump to a manager? I'd start by asking the question, what do you think? So let yourself be with the question. This is priming your brain, allowing you to be with the discomfort of not knowing something and see what instinctively comes up. What are things to do as an individual contributor that would demonstrate your readiness to jump to a manager? So what are the things that managers do? What's the description of a manager? So a manager's team, people who they're supervising, they're effective. They're able to communicate what's needed to a variety of individuals with different personality styles. So a manager, if you're going to be demonstrating that you're good at managing, you're going to do things like ask more questions. That's a key behavior. Giving orders, if you're not in the military, giving orders usually doesn't work that well. It'll work for some personality styles, but a lot of times just saying what's needed to be done, other people's brains don't necessarily hear it or get it. And so you may instead of saying, let's say you're in a meeting, an individual contributor in a meeting, instead of just saying, I think we need to do this, here's the reasons for it, you might try saying, in my opinion, this is the approach we should take. Why do you think, that might work? And if you're working on a project with a team, one of the key things that you can do as a man to demonstrate that your manager quality is to meet with people one-on-one and help them really learn a task. Help them understand how to be as efficient and have a deep understanding of what they're doing. There's a lot of people don't ask for help and spend more time on tasks than they really need to because they're kind of doing workarounds. That's not always the case, but that's something that you may consider doing is as an individual contributor. Welcome, welcome. So good to have you here. I'm going to do a room reset in a moment here. But so one of the key things that you can do is take one-to-one time with somebody and make sure that they really understand what their job is. Help them do better at their job. You start doing that with a few people and you're already managing them. You're already playing the role. So now if I'm wanting to move somebody into management, it's going to be easy for me to say, oh, that person, because I see how they're interacting with the team and I see that the team overall is improving because of how they're interacting. And so that's a key thing. Leaders will tend to look like they're working harder. I don't know if it's harder or smarter though, but being able to be efficient with getting what you need to get done so that you're able to help other people complete what they need to complete. And that will often give you more energy. And then another thing too is that's a great one actually is if you're wanting to show how you're ready to jump into being a manager, to be aware of your weaknesses, be aware where you need help, be good at asking for help, show that you can go to different people and say, oh my gosh, this person is better at doing whatever task than I am. I'm going to communicate to them, here's what I need done. I need this done for this bigger purpose. So this is how it fits into the overall project. When can you have that to me by? So right there, empowering other people and asking for help, that's another key thing you can do as an individual contributor to demonstrate readiness to jump to being a manager. So these are all aspects of teaming, partnering, being with other people in new ways. And that's often, sometimes the biggest risk for people is to ask for help. Sometimes we're talking about taking meaningful risks, that's your job. At work, your job is to take many little meaningful risks. And for a lot of us, asking for help or saying, I don't understand something, that's often the meaningful little risk right there. So many of us are used to proving ourselves and performing, and that's the only way of being that we know, and it doesn't always work. I was asking somebody, I shared the story, I've shared it recently, but it applies to this. I was asking somebody who works very high up in a large organization. And they actually went there after owning their own business for years and years and years. And I was like, so what do you actually do there? And they said, you know, most of what I do is translate for people. Team A thinks they know what they need, and Team B thinks they know what they need, and they think that they're communicating with each other. And when the project is on its way, then it starts to come out that, oh no, they didn't really understand what each other needed. And so now a lot of time has been wasted and it's hard to get back on track. So he was saying what he does is he helps speed that process up, basically, asking questions like, okay, what are the steps that you need to take to implement what they just said? Okay, and so he does that. He does a lot of partnering with people. He'll go work with somebody one to one and help them have a deep understanding of what's needed so that they really understand their job. And then they're able to make more meaningful decisions on their own. And then if they need to come check in with him, it's a much quicker conversation. So I think that's another key thing. And this is you've heard me say this if you've joined in before. One of your first priorities when you start working somewhere is to get to know as many people as you can. And if you're in person, if that's an option at all, go have little lunch dates with individuals, go get coffee with individuals. And for those of you working remotely, anytime there's an in-person event, it's very important to go to it, not because you're going to be doing any business there. In fact, don't do business there. Don't talk about it. Get to know people because we need to know other people in order for us to make a decision about it. This is the wildest thing. There's a few people I'm seeing on the comment in the live queue and here on the Zoom link that haven't heard this. So I'm going to share this story again. So back when the internet was first the thing, and some of these companies were like, "Oh my gosh, we don't have to necessarily fly people around anymore. This will be great. We can cut out this expense, but will it really work?" They weren't sure. So they brought on their best people for a global project that was going to be done basically through email. And they started it and it failed miserably. And then they spent 12 years researching why. And this is actually Daniel Goleman's work in his second book, um, where he talks about this. And so what they found out was that even if I'm very capable and have a lot of experience, know my job well, know what needs to be done, if I get an email from somebody and I don't have a face and I don't have a relationship, if I don't have an emotional response to somebody, it's like that to do, that task comes into a void. And I'm just like in a black hole of like, I don't know what to do. And so they found that for global projects, the best thing to do is to fly key leadership, fly people into a weekend time together where they don't talk about business. They just get to know each other. And that way, as they're working on a project that may take a few years, when they get an email from something, they will have the emotional response and be able to say, "Oh yeah, I know how to do that. Oh here, yeah, I know what to do with that." So if they don't, so anytime you're starting a new job, new project, one of the best things you can do, it's counterintuitive because it's like, we're all like, oh, I need to show how important I am. I'm going to get a bunch of tasks done. Don't do it. It will set you up for failure down the road. Most important thing you can do is have one-to-one contact with people. Go get a coffee with somebody get to know them, what they care about, their hobbies, their family, etc. That develops the depth of emotional relationship, and the communications that you have going forward will move that much quicker. So, really important thing. And this is the main focus for career development and any development as a human being is emotional intelligence and then social intelligence. Emotional intelligence is my relationship with me, with my feelings. The more depth I have with myself, the more depth I'll have with others. Social intelligence. And so the beautiful thing about this is that it is a skill that is so underdeveloped in our world, and just a little shift in emotional intelligence and social intelligence makes a huge difference and can go a long way. The price that you pay for making the shift is that you will feel more. You'll be more in touch with your feelings. And so you will feel more hurt. You will feel more fear. I spoke with somebody this morning who was interviewing me to see if they wanted to work with me. And I actually told them, you know what, it's not going to work because you've told me a few times that you are committed to avoiding discomfort. And I guarantee working with me, you're going to be uncomfortable. So this is great. So I'm going to do a quick room reset. I'm getting some more questions coming in here. If you have questions, they don't have to do with this topic. Trust me, I'll tie him back to this topic. But anything from working on your resume, interview questions that you have, management questions that you have, leadership questions, or if you're at a spot in your career where you're like, I could retire, or I could start my own business. I could, I don't really know what to do. I've spent my whole life working for other people. What do I do now? Anything is on the table here. So any question you have career related, what I invite you to do is I love it when you jump in on Zoom directly. I can talk to you one-to-one. If you want to stay anonymous though, then type your questions into the chat, and that way, because this is being live streamed. So price you pay for the best coaching in here is that it's available to everybody viewing in. So that being said, we've got a question coming in here. How do you manage feelings of defensiveness? Oh, great, great. Thanks for the message that you got to run. Good luck with everything. I know you're always working it. Okay, how do you manage feelings of defensiveness when there are no established processes and procedures, and you're being held accountable by a leader who doesn't implement such processes? Hallelujah. That is such a good question. Oh my goodness. We may spend quite some time on this one. It's so good. Thank you for asking that question. I think that 80% of the people listening into this will be able to relate to this. So, geez, that's good. How do you manage feeling? Oh, it's so good. Thank you. Because you're applying it to what you can actually control, which is yourself, emotional intelligence. So we could build on, if you want to review last week's emotional regulation, we talk about that there. But so feelings of defensiveness when there are no established processes and procedures, and you're being held accountable by a leader who doesn't implement such processes. To start, you could ask my assistant. Um, but I maybe I do a better job of that than I realize. But so one of the big challenges that leaders have. So for starters, I'll share a little bit about this from a leadership perspective, or is You may give too much credit to authority. I know that's one of my bad habits. Um, and oftentimes leaders don't really know. They're going on hunches. They're testing things out. And so they may not have established processes and procedures. And then and if they don't have them, or sorry, if they do have those procedures and they want you to do them, but they themselves don't do them, it's a big issue. And for them, it's going to require, it's like you have to sell them on the fact that they need to change. And it's a really hard thing to do when that's your boss or that's your manager. Um, and yeah, managing up is so hard. So, but your question was more specific, which I appreciate, which is how to manage the feelings of defensiveness. So let's break the first key thing is defensiveness is not a feeling. Defensiveness is a strategy. And so let's look at what's underneath the defensiveness. By looking at what's underneath the defensiveness, you're going to have better control of what's going on for yourself. Because you basically know from that question that if you can get your leader to follow processes and procedures like 10% more than they're doing, like that would be a big win. And then they might even double down on it more and say, okay, I really got to do this. And they might, but so if we can just get them doing it a little bit, that'd be great. But how are we even going to do that in the first place when I'm feeling so defensive about it? So, okay, defensiveness, back to that, is a strategy. The strategy of my defensiveness is to distance myself from my core feelings. What? Why would I do that? Because I am so uncomfortable with my core feelings. Huh? My core feelings, as I get closer and closer to feeling incredibly hurt, incredibly angry, incredibly sad, and incredibly afraid, my system starts saying, no, don't go there. Don't feel that. Remember when you were 5 years old and you were taken advantage of in some kind of a way by older siblings or by parents who were kind of used you or manipulated you to get their way, and then you felt like a fool and you felt so hurt, and then they even kind of rubbed that in your face. Well, you promised yourself you'd never feel that way again for good reason. It was horrible. You were out of control. You were a kid. You couldn't do anything about it. So it was a good strategy to say, I'm never going to feel that way again. But if I'm defending against feeling that way, I'm now cutting myself off to very valuable data, very valuable access to personal power. The more that I'm able to be present with a great amount of fear, hurt, anger, sadness, and joy, the more that I can be present with my core feelings, and I don't need to defend against those feelings within myself, I will start to see possibilities and openings of how to communicate with leadership. I will start to see how incredibly scared they are. And that when they're communicating things to me frantically, and I'm like, if you would just freaking follow the process, this wouldn't be happening. But I can start to see, like, oh my gosh, their identity, just like my identity, was at stake around some of this stuff, but I've now allowed myself to be with fear. Oh my goodness, I can now see them as the hurt little child that they are too, still, in a grown-up body. But I can see that going on. And oh, you know what? instead of making them wrong for it, I'm going to communicate with them in a way that lets them know that I understand how afraid they are. And just there, with that connectivity, that there's a good chance that'll start to open stuff up. Not always. There's absolutely a lot of times leaders are just closed and too afraid um to shift. But at least on your part, you can watch the defensiveness happening inside and say, okay, nope, nope, sweetie, let yourself feel the feelings. It's incredibly painful. It's very disaffirming to have leadership not following what they need to be following in order for things to work better. Absolutely. That hurts. It's scary. And of course I'm angry about it. There's nothing wrong with me for feeling upset about it. It makes sense. So I hope if you're able to type in if this is helpful what I'm talking about, please do let me know. And that's I think that's a great question, and there's probably more I can dig into on it. But I'd love to hear if there's anything that's helpful in what I was saying. Feel free to type into the comment section. Are you relating to that, or is anything that I shared bringing up more questions for you? Again, type your questions into the comment section, and Jane will get those over to me, and I'll do my best to answer. Okay. Well, so I'll keep talking a little bit more about this one. You know what? I'll take another break here and share about some of the things that I'm doing. So one of these days soon, I will make an official announcement on LinkedIn and elsewhere that I have my own coaching practice and it's going fantastic. And I'm so busy that I haven't really made an official announcement. So I do still have spaces available for clients. And if that's something that you're interested in, if you'd like to work with a coach, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. You can set up a time to meet with me. We'll throw a link in for a 15-minute meeting. If coaching is something that you're interested in, um, if we're a good fit, I'd love to work with you. I find this job incredibly meaningful. And I love watching people learn and grow. I had a client recently, as part of their testimonial, one of the things they said that why they liked working with me was how excited I get when I see them doing well. They're like, you have no idea how much that actually helps just to see you get excited about my wins and help highlight them for me and reframe successes that I'm having into a bigger vision and a bigger picture of what's possible for me. Like that's actually really helpful because they're like, I just didn't grow up with that. Like that was not something that my parents did with me. So it's actually nice having that. So that was one thing that made me smile because I really love it. It's like one of the reasons I coach is one of the reasons I got into music and art is I like creating. I like creating with people. And so what a fantastic thing to have you creating your life and to have us working on that together. So that's a little bit about me and coaching. If that's something you're interested in, check it out with me. And if we're not, sometimes I'll help people with their resume or whatever they're working on, whatever is important to you. And sometimes a 15-minute meeting just helps you get to like, you know what? I actually have good intuition and I knew what I wanted to do. And it was just helpful to affirm that with you. And thanks for the time. And, maybe I'll reach out in the future. That's totally fine too. If that's the way that our introduction goes. So that's coaching, and then I'll also share some about if you pay attention to anything I put out on social media, I love ice water. And um, if that's something that you or anybody are interested in, I will be taking people out into the lake with me. I'm going to be doing more of that, especially as the water is still very cold. So you'll get all the benefits of it and it'll feel absolutely terrifying and exhilarating and life-changing. You'll get all of that, but the weather here is shifted and has shifted and is going to stay this way, where we don't have to worry about you getting frostbite. So I'm more comfortable taking people in now is basically what I'm saying. So I'm offering that as well. There's a few ways that you can do that with me. We'll throw a link to that program. That landing page is called Be One with Your Fear, which is essentially what I do with everybody that I work with. It doesn't have to be going into ice water, but we take you right up to your comfort zone, have you step over that. This is the zone of proximal development. Lev Vygotsky, who an educator who studied how we learn. So best way is for us to get right up to the edge and then have you step over into what you're afraid of, etc. Test that out, see what you like and don't like about it. And oftentimes what you find is, oh, you know what? I kind of like it here. I kind of like the view. I kind of like this space. Okay, I'm going to stay with this more. And here are the behaviors that I'm going to implement to maintain this new self that I have grown into. So that's some about me and coaching. We are coming up to the hour, so I will be signing off in a little bit. But if there's any more questions or any follow-up to any of the questions that we looked at earlier, feel free to type them into the chat or into the comment section, and I'll do my best to respond. And and feel free to interrupt me at any time, that's fine. I'm going to jump back to this question about managing feelings of defensiveness. I'm going to just start with that part. Maybe I'll build back in again to the rest of it about implementing stuff that leaders aren't paying attention to. So feelings of defensiveness. Again, defensiveness isn't a feeling. My hunch is underneath that is feeling angry, which makes sense. It's like, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're telling me to do it. And I'm having a hard time managing up with you. It's hard to get the whole team to implement procedures when they look at leadership and they're not doing it. So anger, I imagine, is in there. Then hurt, like even I've worked with a lot of people who are making good money and they end up leaving because they feel so hurt because what they were hired to do, the leadership team won't let them do it, or like kind of pretends like they're going to do it, but then reverts back to old ways. And they're like, hey, you brought me on to help you fix this problem. And then as soon as we start fixing the problem, you revert back to your old ways. Like that's incredibly invalidating. That's painful to be around. So that can be part of defensiveness and wanting to defend against feeling that hurt. But that can be a key thing. I think hurt and probably fear too, but I think as a guy, I often look at hurt as the secret weapon because we're so committed to not feeling hurt. Probably like all people, but maybe especially guys, or maybe especially me. So if I can say to somebody in leadership, like, you know, it's I'm having a hard time not experiencing this as invalidation for me in my role, that we come up with stuff that works and works in other companies and I would work here, and we start getting some momentum with it, and then we revert back to other things. It's like I got to ask myself, what am I doing here? And then we probably get down to the fear under the defensiveness too, which is I'm kind of now teeing myself up to get to let go or go to another position. And, because I might be afraid that whatever I'm doing here isn't really going to be implemented and that I'm going to be wasting my time. And that can bring up even deeper feelings that that's really what I deserve. Because we all have these nasty limiting beliefs. I've not worked with one client. Every single person I've ever worked with, biggest critic is themselves. So if you're noticing defensiveness when working with leadership, being able to be with the fears that you have, and that's a valid thing. If you can say to yourself, wow, I'm afraid that I'm going to just write it out here because I'm getting a paycheck and I'm afraid that I might do that because I just want the security. Even allowing yourself to have that honest conversation with yourself may help you then see ways that you could influence that you hadn't seen before. You might be able to say, you know what? If I just commit to doing that, I'm just going to stay here and understand that nothing's going to change as quickly as I want. I'm fine collecting the paycheck. And you know what I'm going to do in that time is I'm going to try to understand why the leadership team is so committed to doing things that don't work. Huh. I didn't realize that I was being hired as a consultant or a job coach as part of this job description, but you know what? Now that I'm accepting that things aren't going to change the way I think they should, let me see if I can really see the leadership team here and really understand what their fears as individuals are. Because if I'm able to do that, I may be able to communicate more effectively with them. And I don't have to put all this pressure on myself to change when it's clear that these people don't want to change. So maybe I can stop with all the self-criticism and use that anger, hurt, and fear that I do feel, but maybe I can use that not to criticize myself, but to be with the people around me with greater depth. And from that space, I may have more insights. I may have better questions that I can ask that will help shift leadership's behavior. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you. Thank you. I'm getting some affirmation and some agreement there. Yeah. So that's really the game. And that's why I love your question. Because you started it with how do you manage feelings of defensiveness? So you're taking responsibility for the things you can take responsibility for, which is yourself. It's just a beautifully put question of managing feelings of defensiveness when there are no established processes and procedures, and you're being held accountable by a leader who doesn't implement such processes. Totally. The leader will probably, you're going to have to implement those for yourself, and for others, you're going to help make that happen. And then leadership will be more likely to pay attention and to say, oh, you know what? This is working. I get why I'm going to have to shift. Can you help me do it? And right there, you might be getting a promotion in your job. So I hope that's helpful. And I'm going to tie everything back to today's theme. Today's subject of your job is to take many little meaningful risks. So yes, you have your job to work with clients, to work with your company, whatever. But the job inside of that job and the job inside of you is to take many little meaningful risks. And here's the secret sauce in the land of EQ is you can start taking meaningful risks simply by being more present with your fear, your hurt, your anger, your sadness, and your joy. Because as you are more present with those core feelings, even joy can be uncomfortable, with those core feelings that we usually experience as uncomfortable. Well, right there, you're taking a meaningful risk. You're becoming more you. You're embracing yourself more fully. And you will have more leverage in your communications with others. Now, there's one person on this meeting that I know knows this game and knows how incredibly challenging it is. So while it sounds simple to actually allow myself to be with more and more discomfort and not beat the living crap out of myself for feeling more discomfort, which is what we tend to do, is very helpful having a coach. And it's very helpful having a group of people, if you can afford it, or if you can set that up for yourself in your friend group or at work, to have a group of people who are on the same journey with you, who get the game that taking meaningful risks, accepting my core feelings more and more, and having people do that with you will accelerate your growth significantly. It's really hard to do alone because when I'm alone, I'm my own silo. I'm 41, and my most of the development is already done. Now our brains are always changing. We have neuroplasticity at any age, but the core of my belief system structure is already set up. And so for me to shift that, it's effing hard. So, personal growth books. Um, I love some of these podcasts I'm listening to, like How to Take Over the World and Founders, and some of these things, anything by the Bob and Judith Wright, doctors Bob and Judith Wright, their books, very helpful. So there's a lot of wonderful information out there, a lot of great personal growth stuff you can get into, listen to on audiobooks, read, etc. That's all great. But the next step and where you get more bang for your buck is in working with somebody on it. Even if you have a therapist, being able to apply this to it with a therapist can be wonderful. So I hope this is helpful. I'm going to be signing off unless there's any last questions here. I'll be back next week. I'm here noon to 1 Central Time every Wednesday. And if you like live streams on Instagram and YouTube, I'm also doing stuff in the evenings on Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time. And that is just me talking with people about cold water. And of course, I bring personal growth stuff into there too, because that's what I do. But that's tomorrow evening. I'm going to be talking with Craig Shamala. He's the guy who shot the viral video, and he loves going out into ridiculous weather to capture to get amazing footage. So with the lightning storm that we had last night, oh God, he got some good stuff. So anyway, if that kind of stuff interests you, join in, listen in, ask questions, etc. tomorrow evening as well. So I will. Great having you. Thank you for joining in here. Good having you on. It really brightened my day to see you. And until later, take care, everybody.